Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Kraft, and this is Adam Sanchez. And this show is called Enlightened Connections. And this is our very first show, our premiere. And the topic of this show is about souls, twin flames, and twin souls, and how they manifest and how they're connected. And we have a purpose for this particular show. So, Adam, why don't you go ahead and share the purpose?
Sure. So the purpose of this video is to inform, support, and uplift the collective by expanding the understanding of what the soul actually is, how it works, what its parameters and limitations or illimitations or unlimitations are.
Beautiful. So Adam and I have a really interesting story about how we met. We met on Facebook, and there was an instant resonance. I always noticed his comments, and he felt like soul family right away. And eventually, after probably a year of connecting on there together, he ended up calling me, and we talked on the phone. And then for about a year, we've been talking on the phone very regularly. And when we get on the phone, it's for hours at a time, every time. We can't seem to limit our time together. But what we quickly discovered in sharing our life experiences and sharing ourselves with each other, we very quickly realized that we were literally like the same person. We can't get over the similarities, the coincidences, the synchronicities throughout our lives. So that was really interesting. So we always would say, like, we're twins, we're exactly like the same person. I mean, there are differences which you'll be able to pick up on just by watching us and listening to us talk. But that's the background about how we met. Adam, do you want to share anything about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I remember noticing your posts in the same vein, Stephanie, that there was just, I resonated with them. I understood them explicitly, implicitly, in every possible way. It's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh my God, I so agree. And I don't know if they had the love button in Facebook at that point, but I remember feeling that way about the status. I was like, I want to love this. I remember just feeling a great resonance with all your words. And so that eventually, because I love to connect with people, wherever, Facebook or however, but it's rare to find the connection this strong, this clear, where you just resonate on so many things. So I remember feeling the strong desire to connect with you more and have the phone conversations and get to deepen that connection. And as we have, it's just more and more incredible as time goes on. I mean, it's not really incredible, I do believe it, but it could be kind of hard to believe sometimes just how many parallels and synchronicities. And as I was sharing with you the other day, we were me too before it was me too. It's like I would share something and Stephanie would be like, oh yeah, me too, and then Stephanie would share something and oh, me too. And so at this point it's just kind of become a commonplace thing that we're just like, we take it for granted that it's like, oh yeah, me too, that's right.
Pretty much every word we each say is like exactly what the other one is either saying or thinking.
We're thinking. Yeah, and like you said, Stephanie, there are some distinguished character traits. We are our own people. There's different generations or different life experiences, origin stories, but the parallels are much more present than the differences.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we do so that we can introduce ourselves to the audience, and because since this is our very first video, we can give an idea about what we do. So why don't you go ahead and talk about everything that you do?
Sure.
And people can find you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I am a health leader, which means that I've just come to experience a lot of different modalities of healing in health and wellness that I share with others because I find them to be the most effective. So how do I lead through health? Through yoga teaching, personal training, vegan cuisine, and also essential oil astrology. Those are a conglomeration of all the different avenues that I've explored over the past, many years that I found to be the most effective in terms of transforming the individual's experience of their incarnation or really claiming their inner divinity, their full, true purpose, those kinds of things. So if you feel called to learn more about any of those subjects, feel free to contact me through my Facebook or Instagram. The company name that I work for, my company, is Raw Life Yoga. And so you can find that on Instagram or Facebook. There is also a website to debut soon. So stay tuned for that. It's not quite live yet, but more exciting stuff on the horizon. So and Stephanie, you have a lot of great stuff to offer the world in terms of what you do. So I'd love to hear you share that part as well.
Thank you. And that's wonderful about everything you do, by the way. And we are going to be doing another 2 videos coming up on just asking each other questions to share with the world more in depth what we do. So everybody who's watching, you'll get to, if you want to learn more about Adam and everything he does and what I do, we will be highlighting all of that in a future video. So what I do is I'm an energy healer. I've been an energy healer for, about 17 years. I have my own modality. I work with people all over the world. It's a very powerful energy that flows through me and does healing on every level: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And when I do energy healing, I connect with the person's higher self and can channel that and bring messages forward to help guide them. And then I'm a hypnotherapist. I've been a hypnotherapist for I think 14 years now, and I do life between lives hypnotherapy, which we're going to get into in this video a little bit, because recently Adam and I met and he had a session with me. So we're going to talk about that because it's about the topic of the video, about twin flames and twin souls. And I work with twin flames also worldwide. And I have a YouTube channel under my name, Stephanie Kraft, which has videos about twin flames. But so that's basically what I do. And so let's get right into the topic. And also you can find me on my website, stephaniecraft.com. And I also have a natural body care line that I infuse with essential oils and my energy healing, and that's called Radiant Sun Botanicals, and the website is radiantsunbotanicals.com. So,
and Stephanie, you kind of specialize in twin flames in a sense, right? I mean, you're
now I do. Yeah, it kind of happened to me actually about that. Twin flames started coming to me, coming to my practice as a hypnotherapist and as an energy healer in around 2000, in the early 2000s. Well, not the early, but around 2006, 7, 8, 9, those years. And I didn't know the word twin flame. That wasn't really in my consciousness, and I didn't know what it was. And the people who were coming to me were not using that word either, but they were having sessions with me where they were actually one soul, but incarnated in 2 bodies. And we're going to get into it today too, where there's more than just 2, but in the cases that were coming to me, there were, it would be like one person coming in a lot of distress because they had this other person that was sort of an integral part of their life that they couldn't, pull away from, but it was with a lot of pain, a lot of excruciating emotional pain. So this was going on for so many years. And then one day, not one day, but I ended up meeting my twin flame. I actually have 2. Well, I have more than 2, but people who understand what twin flames are have a certain connotation. There's a connotation to the term, but it's really more than that. And that's actually why we're making this video, to expound upon what people in the general population think about twin flames and souls. So I want to ask you, Adam, what do you think most people think of what a soul is? And what do you think it actually might be versus what people think it is?
Sure. So, I love talking about spirituality. I talk about this with anybody who will be open to it. And so, I've heard from a lot of different people. I think generally the consensus would be that the soul is, within the body. It's maybe like your inner divine connection, if people are, believe in the divine within them, that sort of thing. That there's, this, maybe if you believe in reincarnation, it's like your own little unique identity, spark of God that keeps reincarnating and it learns a soul lesson, right? I'd say that's probably like a basic understanding of the concept of soul. Also, I think there's need or a dawning of understanding that the soul and the spirit are actually different. Some people kind of use soul and spirit synonymously, and my understanding, so I'll just answer your question, like, how do I view it? That the soul is the sort of physical, spiritual component of the self, and the spirit is the metaphysical component of the self. The soul is your individual imprint, while the spirit is the energetic connection to your higher self, or the power that lives out. I guess if I could put it this way, like, the spirit is the masculine external, the soul is the internal. And as I understand it now, as I've come to the awakening of all this twin flame stuff, when I first heard twin flames, I thought it was just like, oh, okay, or even twin souls, or okay, maybe, yeah, you had one split and they, went their separate ways, but they were still connected, and that was that. As I've come to understand it now, the soul is just like the spirit in a sense, or the spirit of God, or the concept of God, love beyond boundaries. The soul is eternal and unlimited. And so it is the individuated incarnation of the divine, but it also, just like the divine, is not subject to any limitations that our rational mind will associate with it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point. Because I think typically people think that, like you said, you have a soul, and it's like, my understanding of what a soul is, it's like a ball, not a ball, but like an energy form, a light being, that is a mass of energy, color, light, vibration, intricate geometry of light that we don't understand from the human mind, but that is the essence, and that is an entity, right? And that portion of that energy will be embodied in the body to live a life. So people think one soul, one body, and you live that life. And some people who believe in reincarnation believe that that soul keeps on reincarnating and having life experiences. But what I've come to learn is that it's way more expansive than that. And that's why we're making this video, to really educate people, but not educate as in tell you what's true, because I don't know what's true. All I know is my experiences, and the experiences that have come through my clients and my work for so many years. And Adam, too, is having realizations, epiphanies every single day, because his consciousness has opened up even more so since we did our session, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Which will be very interesting actually for you to share what came through that session. But basically what I learned is that souls are way more fluid than what we had thought. We can have souls can create other souls. So it's like, we don't really know how, but we know that we as humans can have babies. So it's something like that. But at the soul level, if we're creating another soul, it's going to be more of a replica, or have more of a similarity with the first one, and so on. And I've heard about, and that I would call those twin flames. I don't have a very concise definition of a twin flame, other than that they are originating from a same source, but it's more than one, and it can be the development or the creation of a soul from a soul can keep going on and happen in multiple ways. And this is probably very new information for a lot of people, because it's not linear like humanity has been thinking. It's different. I have had a client tell me that, so in the twin flame world, when you have a twin flame, a lot of them have telepathic communication with their twin. It might be telepathic communication with the twin's higher self or the person. So it varies, but one of my clients was having telepathic communication with her twin's higher self. She had not met him in person, but or knew of who he was on the planet. But this man, this spirit, the higher self of her twin, started speaking to her. And actually, very interestingly enough, she had one session with me 1 year prior. She didn't even really remember my name. She had an extremely profound experience in the session that was a massive spiritual awakening for her. But that was what she kept with her. She kind of didn't think about who the practitioner was or whatever. But 1 year later, this higher self of her twin started telepathically talking to her and told her, contact Stephanie Kraft. And she was like, yeah, that's that lady I went to see. So she contacted me and she told me her whole story. 3 days ago, my twin flame started talking to me telepathically. I had no idea what that word was. He told me to contact you. And she's like, I have no idea, but this just opened up and it's nonstop communication for the past 3 days. And my whole world has been, exploded. And I wrote back and I said, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's, amazing that he told you to contact me because I, like you said, Adam, I do specialize in this. She was blown away. She couldn't believe it. She didn't know anything about this realm. And so he told her later on in their relationship, telepathic relationship, he told her, we are going to create another soul, and it's going to be actually a baby. You're going to have a baby with your husband, but it's actually my baby. And he also told her that they as a soul created her husband. They created him.
Wow.
This is stuff that we don't understand. I don't claim to understand it.
We almost never even think about it. I've never really used to think about things in these terms before.
I never had either. But this is just one story. But I've heard since then, I've heard of so many other stories of twin flames explaining that they are creating other souls. And actually, this is the perfect time for you to talk about your session that you had with me. So I do Life Between Lives hypnotherapy. I met Adam recently in Florida. We're in May. Was it this month? It was
just a couple weeks ago.
That's so weird. It feels like a long time ago, but not a long time. But anyway, time is weird right now. So I went down there and I did a Life Between Lives session with Adam, and he went into a past life. And then in those sessions, when you move through a past life, then I guide the person out of the body at the time of death and to the spirit world, to the afterlife, into their soul state where they can gather more information than what we can gather in our normal consciousness. So why don't you tell everybody about that session and what you learned?
Sure. Yeah, the session itself was very interesting, and especially the latter part. I've done a lot of hypnotherapy, and I'm a big proponent of it. I love that work. It's really deep and transformational. And sometimes, maybe depending on the depth of the session, it can be a little bit harder to move through gracefully or stay with that, because it's a non-linear consciousness, right? And being able to stay with it, resonate with it, and understand and transcribe it or transpose it, understand it, was a challenge for me. So even just like being in that state, the Life Between Lives state, I think you might remember from the session that I was kind of struggling to get out of my rational mind and receive the information. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? And so, it still kind of boggles me though, honestly. And I was just sharing this with you, Stephanie, earlier. I have been getting new levels of understanding and, information coming through to explain that first. It kind of came to me in a vision. So I just got this image because you were asking, I don't remember exactly what you asked. I know you asked if you and I, yes, this is what it was. So because Stephanie and I had been feeling this resonance, like we were twins for so long, and just kind of like, having a playful relationship with it, not knowing for sure, but kind of trusting the feeling of it and the synchronicities that would just keep coming. So that in this session, Stephanie asked me directly, so do you have twin flames in this incarnation? Is Stephanie Kraft one of them? And
I didn't actually ask about myself.
You did. You said, am I one? Meaning you.
It happened a little bit differently than that. I asked in general without leading at all.
Right. No, for sure. And then in the end, after you had led up to a couple of points, you're like, is Stephanie your twin flame? Like it was like the last question, one of the twin flames. And I was like, oh yes. Yeah, it came through. Well, maybe I remember it.
It's different than that, but
Okay, well, I was definitely in an altered state, so my memory is not normally my strong suit, let alone when I'm
it's the
altered.
same outcome. You found out that we were.
But ultimately, so the one question that you did ask after that, it had been established that there was a twin resonance between us. You asked more details of like, well, how? Where is that connection? What does that look like? I don't remember the specifics of your question, but I do remember the specific response that came through to my awareness, which came through from, I guess the oversoul or the higher self. I don't know necessarily the word to use, but the reason why I mentioned that is because it was definitely non-linear. It was just like these images that were trying to explain this non-linear concept in a linear way so that my mind could understand. But basically, I got this image of kind of like a family tree, where you have the one person and that diverges and this sort of thing. And I saw that it was very just surface level at that moment, but I saw that we had diverged at one point, that we were at one point united as a soul, and that there was a point where we broke off and then started to, move down that line. And so in my mind, I came to the awareness in that moment. It's like, oh, wow. So it's kind of like the soul, I wouldn't say splitting, because then it sounds more like it's separate, but spreading or multiplying. It's like replicating itself in a sense. And so that's what came through that first session, just that brief understanding. Should I go into the deeper understandings that came last night and a couple days within?
Sure.
So recent, because that was what, like two and a half, maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. So I've still been trying to wrap my mind around it because I understood that we were originating from the same place, but I didn't understand exactly how we had got to where we are now. And so my mind was trying to wrap itself around that. And the past 2 days and last night especially, I've just getting more information, more awareness, I guess you could call it downloads, whatever, right? Of understanding that we actually were the same soul at one point. Like when I first saw the information, I didn't know exactly how close our souls were or at what point they divided. I just understood that they were twins at one point and they moved away. But then last night I understood that we were actually the same soul, like, or maybe more specifically, the point at which we were actually the same soul. And then we had made the decision to sort of replicate ourselves. And so then we split into, if you would call it, I mean, obviously at that point we weren't who we are now, but, and then we split into, so let's say it was Adam Stephanie as one, and then it became Stephanie and Adam as two. And then we started to move down the lines, of course, like with different names and incarnations in the past, right? Because it was probably a while ago. And now we're at the point of actually being the way it came through. And it's not like an ego thing, like, oh, like we're so great or the best or better than anybody else like that at all. It's just kind of like along the timeline of where things transpired, that we're kind of at the top of a soul group, leading the souls who then started to replicate themselves after us. We're leading them and all of us to our, highest evolution, to our expansion, to freedom, greater love, that kind of thing.
Amazing. If you imagine like those Russian dolls, right? There's the bigger one,
yeah,
the little one, or medium and little. I really think it's just like that. It's like the replication from one to the other. And they're really along the same, like, if you call it a ray, like a ray, it's the same twin ray, right? And we're all, any soul connected from that ray is a twin.
Sure. That's specific frequency or resonance.
Yeah, because you're originating from each other, from the same one. And people think that so I'm in the twin flame community and there's like YouTube videos and blogs and Facebook groups and stuff. And I'm really stay away. I mean, I'm an observer. I can't really get into it because almost everything is false information. And so what people are following and falling into are all these labels and extremely strict ways of thinking about it. And it really causes a lot of suffering for people, because if people have met their twin and they just think like a certain way, you're supposed to be with your twin. It's a romantic connection. You have a mission on earth together. And if you don't do it together, you're failing, or you're supposed to ascend together. There are all these myths. They're all myths. They're all lies. To be honest with you, they're lies. And so
Or maybe they're just misunderstandings of the truth, you know,
They are.
misinterpretations of the truth.
And you're right. That's a better way to put it. But
Because I think there could be some like merit to the concept that we're ascending together, in the sense that like we want our soul groups to all evolve together, right? Because that's a piece of ourselves. But I think your point is that in the rigid expectation of it, it creates a lot of bondage. To
yes,
think like you can meet. So for example, you were talking with me about this the other day, if you want to bring it up, you know, the idea of the sort of like pre-activator twin soul flame, and then like the post, like, you know, activated one, where you kind of have that first one that you meet that just wakens you to the whole thing and does the work, and then like helps you do your own work because they make you do your own work basically, and then they prepare you for that ultimate twin that you're supposed to actually end up with. So that the idea like you meet your twin flame might not necessarily mean that you end up together, but if you do believe that you have to be together, that can cause a lot of bondage and suffering.
exactly. And there's a myth out there that, you know, you have to be together physically with your twin to ascend out of this planetary system.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
believe.
that sounds kind of like a lie, or just definitely, you know, misunderstanding of the truth, at least, you know,
Yeah.
could be a lie.
So gosh, where were we going with all of that? I was talking about what twin flames are like. And I mean, people think, like I said, you know, they think that you only have one because the word twin means two. But the way
Hmm.
you and I have discovered it is really what we're talking about is multiple, multiple entities or light beings created down a particular from an original one, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So anybody that we meet along that line will be our twin flame, because we're from one. We're really from one. And so it's just so interesting, because we can have more than one. So like I said earlier, I've had the twin flame experience 2 times with 2 separate people. And even though you and I are twin flames, I'm not calling it the twin flame experience, because what's out there in the twin flame community is this pattern of difficulty and coming together and going apart and bringing up each other's stuff to heal it all. But with my other twin souls like you and the other ones that I've met, several others that are literally from the same one, we know that we are one, just like you and I do. And there's no conflict, there's harmony, there's peace, there's resonance, there's love and friendship. And that has been such a delight and blessing in my life. And so people, you know, I want people to know more that the expanded version of twin flames. And I just had a woman reach out to me. She has 2 twin flames. One of them is on the other side. Sometimes we have a twin that's you know, on the other, either has crossed over or has not incarnated, but they will reach out to us telepathically to let us know that they are another part of our soul. This woman reached out to me and told me about that experience she had, and she had already met a twin flame in person and had known him for a long time. So she's an example of one person who is aware of having 2 twins. And I know so many other examples of that. And so you actually found out in your session that not only are you and I twins, you have more than just one other.
Oh yeah, and that was also part of, you know, this grand realization and understanding, and, you know, being able to expand past that linear rational mind. And I think you're right in you saying like people hear the word twin and the connotation is, you know, 2. Even, you know, in astrology, Gemini is the twins, right? It's just 2 people. But there are actually, you know, there's identical twins like septuplets or whatever. I forget what they call them, but there's 6 people who have the same DNA. It happens, right? So who's to say that the soul couldn't reflect that same reality? Yeah, actually, it was interesting too. You know, Stephanie, you absolutely had everything to do with awakening me to this reality of twin souls and twin flames and what that means. You know, I had heard about it many times before, but I had never experienced it in the way that you presented it to me. How perfect, right? That my twin would teach me about twin flames. But, you know, just a side note about that, it was interesting because I've always, ever since I was a child, wanted a twin. It was a very strong desire for me, and you could say that is because I experienced a lot of isolation or whatever the reason. Also, if you look into my astrology, my North Node is in Gemini, and Gemini is the twins. I know, Stephanie, you don't necessarily have to come to a conclusion on your understanding of that. But for me, I do think that there is something to say about that astrological component, or at least for me, the fact that I had such a strong desire at a very young age. I remember I was 5 years old and I was like, Mom, can I have a twin? It's like obviously not going to happen, but it was a strong desire enough for me to actually think about it, ask for it, and, dream about it even for a while. And a desire that stayed with me, actually. An astrologer also had pointed out to me that I felt that strong desire and that I was looking for that in partnership, in romantic partnership. And actually that astrology reading, which was about 3 years ago, when he told me that, I started crying because it was so true on such a deep level. Like I didn't even fully come to awareness of that until he had said it. When he had said it, it brought it to my awareness, and that's why I started crying, because of the resonance of the truth of it. It's like, wow, yeah, I really just want to experience that sense of like equality and partnership and union that's effortless and flowing and that sort of stuff. So that actually I had a romantic connection, which came up in our session, that was another one of those twins. And it's amazing because the connections, the similarities, even astrologically, how many things we had similar, was kind of mind blowing. But the important part of what we were talking about in terms of like moving beyond the linear mind, or any sort of attachment to the concept of what a twin flame is, the relationship, I think, because you had talked about the difference between the sort of activator twin flame and the more like stabilizing one, right? Like the activator is basically kind of like a negative experience, that twin flame experience that's more common, that challenges you to grow and evolve, and you hear about all that stuff. And so that seems to be what that relationship was for me more than anything. And if I had gotten caught up, and I was, I found myself getting caught up in the idea, because we were so similar, that we needed to be together, despite all odds, despite the fact that the relationship wasn't fulfilling for me, or that my needs weren't getting met, despite me having communicated that, a lot of issues, that if I had believed that I was beholden to that relationship, I would have caused myself a lot more suffering and missed the lesson, actually, which for me, the lesson was about claiming my power, about knowing my worth, and not settling for less, even in the face of, the perfect twin flame situation, So I do believe that even though we didn't end up together, that he was and is my twin, and served in the form of activating me to this awareness, to this experience, to claiming my own individuated power without feeling like he was the source of it or anything like that. So,
oh my God, you just said it so beautifully, so beautifully. And, I don't like to put the labels on it. I know we talked about it before, trying to put these people into boxes and putting a label on them, but I don't subscribe to even just having a label for like an activator or twin. I mean, I know that you're just using words to try to explain the experience.
right.
And I understand that we have to do that with the human language. We have to put words to things to explain it. But I'm not going to put people into a category. I'm just saying that for like the people watching, I don't think it's a good idea for any of us to put people into a box of like, this is a catalyst twin. I'm not buying into any of that at all, because everybody has a unique soul agreement with one another and with multiple people. So we come in specifically to learn something and to teach something. And you've done that. And I have that experience with my twin. It's like the outcome of my twin flame experience was an incredible, words cannot express oneness within myself, and love, and being in my power, and peace, and joy, and bliss. And it all came about after I disconnected, and I had a dream that's beyond words, of oneness with myself and with him as being me. I can't even. So really, the dream showed me that it's almost like he's not someone else, he's me, we're one. And that's the beauty of it, because that's the reality of it. In our incarnations, I'm looking at you as an external person, but when we go back home, we merge together back as one. We are one. And yes, we come into incarnations separately to have lives, but sometimes we come into incarnations together. So for example, in one body, I had my twin and I, when I say my twin, you know, it could be, I have had 2 twin flame experiences, but I have all the other ones too, including you and some other people. So people never know who I'm talking about because I keep the identities private for their, you know, for everybody's privacy. But one, what was I going to say? Oh, my twin and I incarnated together in a lifetime as the same person. And I went into that lifetime under hypnosis, and we were the same person. And then when we left that body at the time of death, we both left as one, and then we separated out as 2, and we were just playing and laughing and swirling around each other as light beings, enjoying the fact that we had come down into a body in one incarnation in the same body. So here's the thing. A lot of people think that in your body you just have one soul, and it's not true. Sometimes we have just one, but in that lifetime, because my twin and I had already, like you were talking about how we kind of like birth each other, we had already been 2, but we had a lifetime together as one. And there's another experience that I had once, that my other twin and I were both the same person in another lifetime, and with an additional soul. So there were 3 souls in the body as one person. I had another incarnation with another being that was me. My soul was in that body, and there were also 2 others. So now in this incarnation, I know that I was him, but I also, through mutual friends, I don't know the person, but through mutual friends, heard someone say she was also him. And it's true. We were both him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, especially now that I've expanded my mind around this stuff a little bit. Could you also, because I remember when you and I first started connecting, you helped me to understand this more, because it sounds kind of like the same thing, but it's different, right? Explain the difference between twin souls or twin flames and soul groups.
Yeah. So, you know, you did a beautiful job explaining how we create from an original, you know, first of all, there's, let's say, God or source, right? The source of all creation, infinite intelligence, births souls, because probably that's how it happens. And then from like that big, huge first one, then it will birth multiples. And so that will be coming from one originating. I would call it an oversoul, because the oversoul is it contains all of its creations. So when we go, that's like our parent, like that's who we are at the highest level, and then we can remerge. But because it's birthed so many, we are multiples, and so the oversoul would be called they. And that came through your session, because I asked, who am I speaking to? And your response was, we are many. We are a plural. Yeah. So it was the oversoul I was talking to, and that you were connecting with. And so, so are you there? There we go. It's kind of weird with the connection. Okay, we're back. So, so anybody birthed from the same oversoul, and my definition is, I'm calling them twin flames, because they're coming from the same one. Now, from creation, you have many, many oversouls, right? And then they're birthing their own replicas. Well, when you get a soul group together, you'll take some souls from all these different oversouls. So they're not directly connected from the same one. Ultimately, we're all one, right? But who's birthed from the oversoul would be twins. And then when you gather several from a variety of oversouls and you put them in a group, that would be a soul group. So you're not twins. You're not twins, but some of your twins can be in your same soul group, and other soul members, soul family can be in your soul group who originate from other oversouls. So they're not twins, but there's a resonance. Anyway, you can have a soul group of truth. I'm in a soul group of truth, and we also assume that you are too.
No, I definitely am. I claim that for sure. Yeah.
And we can feel that from each other because we're dedicated to truth. And we're truth seekers, and we stand up for the truth. And so, so we share that. We're in the same soul group, but then we can have overlapping soul groups. So I'm also in a soul group of loyalty, and I can have several. Maybe you're not. We haven't talked about this before, but it's just an example. You might be in a soul group of authenticity, for example. So these are things that we have decided we're going to work on, and so we can have overlapping soul groups, like we're both in one together, but you might have other soul groups and know other people for other themes. Soul groups are for missions, work, relationships, anything we come to earth for. We meet up with our soulmates. Now, twin flames.
So soulmates are part of the soul group.
That's correct. And twin flames and twin souls, which I don't have a definition for each of those. I call them the same, twin flame and twin soul. They are, there can be a way more intense interaction with a twin flame. Now, I wouldn't call my interaction with you more intense, or with the other ones where there's harmony, but I say intense in terms of challenges with some of them.
Sure. I was also thinking about that in terms of like the resonance, like if you would say, because it occurs to me, and tell me how you feel about this, that the twin souls that are coming from the same, soul essentially feel a stronger resonance than just a soul group, like versus a soulmate. Like a soulmate, I feel like, as I've met a lot of soulmates, I think, where there's a strong resonance, but it's more like, oh, wow, we have so much in common. We're really alike and we get along so well. This is a great and natural connection, versus the twin experience with like you and I, where it's just like astounding almost just how many similarities there are.
It's astounding.
Astounding is a good word. Yeah. Better than unbelievable, because I believe it, but it's, it's astounding.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you brought this up a little bit ago about how you felt that you always wanted a twin. And I want to talk about this theme of how throughout our lives, we can actually feel our twin. We don't know that that's what we're feeling. So sometimes we have this experience and then meet a twin. Sometimes we don't. So all situations are different. But I had the experience of feeling like I was falling in love. And this happened twice. And I could feel, so I have the two twin flames. It happened with both. And I could feel them for years. One of them I was feeling for years before I met him, and he was coming into my dreams regularly. And then I was having other experiences with them before I met, where they were actually in my energy field, and I could feel them with me before we met. It was really interesting. Did you have, I feel like you've told me some stories about dreams. Have you had experiences?
I did have a dream. I was just thinking about that as you brought it up. And it's interesting, because it started to come into my life, and I was sharing it with you at the time. Just before this twin flame romantic relationship came in. And I wonder, I don't know if it's the same twin or not. It was definitely a sort of activation, in the sense, like preparing me for a twin flame experience, twin flame relationship, romantically. So the images of, the person in my mind versus the real person didn't necessarily match up. But I know that sometimes that doesn't matter, because the soul can look different or present itself differently psychically or in the dream time than the actual incarnation. So I don't know if it was the same twin. I think it might have been a different twin, or maybe my understanding of that relationship is not fully mature or clear. But yeah, I was having some dreams, and they happened right before this relationship. So, you know.
Wow. I knew that, but I also thought you had maybe had dreams for years prior. Had you had that?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint because it's not so much of a dream like in the sleeping state, more kind of like a feeling or an intuitive longing for something, like which I would connect back to that childhood desire I mentioned. I remember 5 years old, is kind of when I started to obsess about relationships, I guess if you could say that. I was like, I just wish I had a twin, someone to share all my time and experiences with, and like someone who would understand me, someone who I could share with. And that desire came in very strongly at that time and stayed with me ever since. And then there were different experiences of kind of getting fulfilled in that way or ways similar to, but nothing ever really came close until recently. And even that experience, I would say, was the closest to it, but I don't think it's the full expression of what that longing was, but I think it was the closest illustration.
Yeah, I find it so interesting how we can feel them, dream about them before meeting. And, we have the thing about twin flames is that usually knowing them is accompanied by supernatural experiences. And I would include that dreaming about them before a meeting is included in that. And so many people have astounding experiences in this way. So let's see, is there anything else you want to talk about twin flames, twin souls, and to explain to people? I'm just looking at our notes.
Just replaying some of the information that came through for me in the past few days. It's kind of like mitosis, right? Like that biological term when the cells replicate their DNA and then split into two basically identical cells, right? I mean, yeah, I guess it's a good analogy, right? It's like your body is the maybe oversoul or the originator, and then each cell is like another soul creating new souls, kind of like that. Yeah, that seems to be, what fits. And also, just as a side note, you and I didn't talk too much about this, but as I was getting more of these informational downloads, I just keep seeing examples of these, possible soul groups. So this is just one example, right? I don't know if we had talked about Adam Sandler before. I think we did. And then I was watching this movie yesterday. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but That's My Boy. It's really funny with Adam Sandler and Andy Samberg, right? Those are their names. And I was watching this movie last night as I'm watching, thinking about twin flames and twin souls. I'm like, what if they're the same soul?
Whoa.
Even their names are similar, and they have a kind of similar comedic style in a lot of ways, and who knows just how many and how far-reaching this is, and just how connected we are after all. And that's one of the other things that's been a real great merit in terms of understanding things in this way, because I felt so isolated for so long. I think that's a very common thing for the human experience. And in this understanding, it's like, whoa, wait, I'm not alone at all. Nor am I isolated. I'm one, literally, spiritually, not physically, but spiritually and even mentally and emotionally sometimes, with this beautiful group of souls who are me. And, instead of me also having to look back into my life, and, I think I told you about another relationship with this beautiful woman that just like unlike any other relationship I've ever had with a woman. And from the very beginning when we met, it was like that resonance. And ever since, even though we are no longer, engaging romantically or otherwise, there's still this soul resonance where we feel like we're constantly on the same path or a parallel path, and it just keeps presenting itself. So I'm starting to consider, well, she's likely my twin as well. It just feels right. It would explain so much is the best way to put it. It just explains kind of everything once you start to wrap your mind around it.
I thank you for sharing that, because I think just for people hearing what you just said, they're going to start to think back like, wow, maybe that person is another part of my own soul, because people are so limited in their thinking, which we've talked about. And so by hearing these stories, it might expand their consciousness to allow for the understanding of the oneness that they really are with others. And this is, I think, a beautiful exploration, because I think you and I are offering to the world the invitation to know your oneness, understand and feel and know your oneness. And that's what this is all about, right? And, you know, I have a little story about another one of mine, that this woman came into my office for a Life Between Lives hypnotherapy session in 2014. We had never met. She was under hypnosis and in her soul state, and her soul was speaking through her. And she said to us, the two of you, she and I, you have been the same person in 21 lives.
Wow.
You are from the same soul.
Wow.
She went on to list several of the people that we had been, who are like well known in the world, and which is amazing, because then we can link up. Oh my gosh, that's why I'm interested in this, and both of us, you know, oh, that's why we have an affinity for that. And so she said that. So let's see, we were the same person in 21 lives. We come from the same soul. At that point, I had already met several of my other twin souls, and I asked, what about these others? And they, you know, confirmed, of course, yes. And then then she and I became friends that day because of our connection. And the thing about us is that we are literally like twins. So there's been no other person besides you up until before I met you. There had been no other person in my life who thought and felt exactly the same about everything. And so what happens with us is that, let's say we'll go 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever without talking, she and I, and then we'll reconnect and we'll talk on the phone, or we'll see each other and catch up. And we share our life experiences, our epiphanies, what we're learning, how we're growing in that time, in those 2 weeks, in those 3 weeks. And it'll be like, we are having different life experiences, but the learning, the soul growth, the epiphanies are all the same. Like, oh, you know, it's the me too. Oh my God, me too, the whole time. And so this is another beautiful thing about having twin souls, is that we are literally living our lives together in parallel, whether we know each other or not. And the beauty of knowing each other is that we can then compare notes. We'll often have these experiences of going through the same thing. Like, she and I moved at the same time. We go through life experiences at the same time. We go through feelings. We feel each other, you know, emotionally, psychically, and it's such an amazing journey to have this be a part of your human experience, because it's very different from normal, I guess, in incarnations where you feel like you're the only one doing it. There's this incredible connection, and I think that we're talking about this today because, well, you and I talk about it almost every day, but talking about this today publicly, because what I'm getting right now intuitively is that more and more people are going to be having this experience. And it's because we are human consciousnesses to the point where now we get to feel and know our oneness.
Yeah, beautifully said. And move beyond the linear, rational mind into the grander reality of how things actually are, versus how we try and understand them or force them into our understanding. I just wanted to point out, you know, what you shared about your story in terms of like the parallel paths of the twins, and a very concrete and clear beneficial example. I mean, a blessing of an example. And I told you this personally the other day, you know, how I've been benefiting personally and directly from your experience in your relationships with twins and twin souls and the challenges associated with it, because through your experience, I've managed to be able to move through my own experience more rapidly and more effectively by avoiding some of the pitfalls, right? Like the misunderstandings that because they're a twin, that I am like enslaved to that relationship, basically, right? That I don't have free will, that I can't leave it, or even if it's dysfunctional, I need to just grit down and, you know, stick with it. So the fact that you had those experiences, right, made my experience, I mean, you kind of pioneered the way for me, that you had that experience for so many years, and then were able to just share it with me. And I was like, okay, well, from Stephanie's experience, I know this is what that looks like, and I was able to just move through it with a lot more ease, a lot more grace, and a lot less suffering. So thank you again for that. I
You're
really appreciate you.
welcome. And thank God, because if I
Yeah,
can,
that's right. Hallelujah.
because if I can save anybody from that pain or shorten the length of the pain, then good, because we don't need to suffer. All we need to do is like get your lessons and get out of there if it's dysfunctional and toxic.
Right.
And we'll talk about this privately, but we have a list of shows to do together beyond the topic around that, the difficulty in toxic relationships. We are going to definitely do some shows about that.
Sure. We could become experts in that too, for sure.
Well, we already are.
Detoxification, even in relationships. That's right.
Yeah. So we have a lot to share with the world. Do you feel complete with this video, or is there more to share?
I think that was the last bit of it. I just think, I would invite people to consider that we are so much more than we have allowed ourselves to believe about ourselves, that we're much greater, and that there's this great source of light that we all come from. And, there's an infinite ways that it can express itself, even beyond our comprehension.
So true and beautiful. Yes. Remind everybody how they can find you, Adam.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook. It's my Facebook page is facebook.com/raw life yoga, as in like raw food. And also my Instagram is the same, raw life yoga. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about yoga, personal training, vegan food, essential oil astrology, and just spirituality in general. I love to focus on the divine and giving us humanity access to the divine within. And I find that these modalities are some of the best ways to do that.
Wonderful. And you can find me on stephaniecraft.com, my website, YouTube channel, Stephanie Craft, and Facebook. I have Healing Arts with Stephanie Craft, I think. Stephanie Craft Healing Arts, something like that. And radiantsunbotanicals.com, and also Facebook page, Radiant Sun Botanicals. This channel is Enlightened Connections. If you have any topics you want us to talk about, please put them in the comments. And also, if you would like us to interview you, also reach out to both of us. We will be interviewing people. We are going to do so many more videos on Enlightened Connections. And yeah, I think that's it. This was great talking to you in this way, Adam.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Everything.
Oh, sure. It's such an honor. I always love connecting with you, Stephanie, as you know, but so that others can know. It's such a joy naturally, and this conversation, I think, is a little snapshot of that. It's so nice to be able to capture the connection that we share so commonly and naturally, and to be able to share that, because we have some really amazing conversations, which of course inspired the desire to do these videos. And forward-thinking conversations where you and I are just like having our own minds blown in the conversations themselves. So it's so awesome to be able to capture this and share it with others, so that they can also maybe have more freedom and expansion in the sense that we experience through these connections.
Yes. Well, have a blessed day, and we will see you again soon.
Blessings to everyone. Thank you, Stephanie Craft.
Thank
you. Love you.
Sanchez. I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.